Okay, so welcome everybody. We're going to be having another very interesting interview about a topic that we've been talking about for years, and finally it's becoming mainstream to a degree in people's awareness. People are starting to talk about it, people are starting to podcast about it, people are starting to write about it, and that is the suppression of health information on the internet. And of course, there's always been an active program of health information suppression. It's been going on for decades, but we thought for one brief shining moment that we'd got around it with the internet. And in the last several years, they've been tightening the screws, and most recently they've been really tightening the screws. So today we're going to be talking with a journalist who has been looking very closely at the recent developments in this story. She did a great in-depth interview with Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower. She wrote a fantastic article for the Epoch Times, which I'm going to encourage everybody to read, and also write the Epoch Times and congratulate them on covering this issue. And so this is going to be a very interesting call. Everybody please welcome Miriam Hinane.
Thank you so much for having me on the program. I'm also the director of the film Vanishing of the Bees and a functional medicine consultant and the owner of a health and wellness magazine and marketplace called Honey Colony, where we aim to empower people to be their own best health advocates. So I've been covering the sick ties between big pharma and big tech, but also experiencing it firsthand on not only with Google, but on all the social media platforms. So I like to think that I have a unique perspective at what's going on from it's outside as a journalist and also as an entrepreneur.
Great. Well, let's actually start then there to talk about how this has impacted you as a journalist and how it's impacted you as an entrepreneur. Everybody's got their own story, but I think it's really important for us to hear the details.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that looking back when I started researching Vanishing of the Bees, which was back in 2007, that maybe I was naive as to who I was dealing with, Bayer Crop Science, that is now merged with Monsanto, and didn't realize what I was getting into. I mean, I didn't plan out to discover that systemic pesticides was what was at the heart of colony collapse disorder. So after that, created Honey Colony, and we used to get, at our height, after several years of working hard from scratch with our excellent well-sourced stories, we used to get about 500,000 unique visitors a month.
Wow.
And we were on our way. So my experience with feeling what I dub Techno-Fascism was back in 2016, and I guess it coincided with the electing President Trump, and a lot of things. If we look at where we are now in 2019, in just 3 years, wow, how things have changed. So I bring that up because as a journalist, and a Canadian, I've considered myself liberal-leaning, and now kind of having a political awakening that the mainstream media is kind of in on bringing about this twisted agenda and twisting the truth. And so I really started feeling techno-fascism because I started selling CBD and being on the front lines of this movement, and then noticing, for instance, waking up and 3 years of our statistics using Facebook ads just gone, can't get them back. Everything that was alerting us, informing us what was working and what was not working as far as campaigns. That was the first thing we experienced. And then afterwards, just all the mainstream processors shutting us down, PayPal, Square, Stripe, QuickBooks, and starting to sense like, oh, what's going on? And now 2019, our traffic has plummeted 76%, and or organic traffic, and realizing, so I was like, does big tech or does Google have any ties to big pharma? Let me look. And sure enough, they are a drug company today, and we know that big pharma owns Congress and has sway, and like you stated, this is nothing new. It dates back to the Flexner Report, which is in 1910, when J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller invested in IG Farben, which is now Bayer, and social media has just made it more obvious. And I believe to look at things as an opportunity, that now the truth is out of the bag and people are waking up in a big, I mean, there's still people that are asleep and don't know that, for instance, Google is like literally using mind control tactics and burying information, and trolls abound. And I mean, this is quite complex. But so after all the shutdowns and Facebook taking, had back then in 2016, I could still bust out my press pass, and it made a difference. I've been banned for life from PayPal, even though I personally have never sold CBD oil on my personal PayPal. And I've been scrubbed off of Kiva and GoFundMe. People have called me the Erin Brockovich of the bee world. So what is an activist, a do-gooder, being scrubbed off of sites? And this is happening to many, many of us, and we're joining together to restore free speech. But like Mike Cernovich, who's an independent journalist and filmmaker, says, fake news is old news. There's just now social media is bringing it to the surface or doing it in a different way. I'm shadow banned also on Twitter. So as a journalist and an outspoken, someone who has a big mouth and is raw and real and has information to share, it's very disheartening to, like I say in my article, many of us are blowing the whistle, but it's become a silent one. It's like a dog whistle that only certain people that are vibing at the same frequency and feeling the same are hearing.
Wow. And we're talking with Miriam Hanane about her experiences as an entrepreneur and a journalist trying to do business and practice her profession on the internet. And as many of us have a sense, this is becoming more and more difficult. But I think hearing it directly from Miriam, you realize, this is not a matter of, they're not delivering email or they're closing a Facebook page. This is really systemic in your case. So you're banned from using PayPal.
Yeah, I'm banned from using PayPal.
And did they give you a reason for that, or they just...
Yeah, they blamed it on CBD, and I tried to say I've never sold CBD. And in any case, it's supposed to be legal. And CBD has fallen in the gray area. And if you want to look at why, one, it's a miraculous compound, and it helps it has myriad benefits. And I say to people, like, what are the chances of sharing bees and bud in common with Bayer? So when I look to see, it's all been strategic, and I think it was in 1992, if I'm not mistaken, that the government patented cannabinoids as a neuroprotectant and an antioxidant.
Right.
And they, in 2016, when we started having problems, put it as a Schedule 1, which says it has, even though it's non-psychoactive, and it's a plant compound, and that the World Health Organization has stated that there's no negative impact or side effects. This was all strategic because what was in the works was for GW Pharma to create their synthetic, fake, crap CBD. And then it conveniently was taken off of Schedule 1. And so, of course, now it falls under the purview of the FDA. So on March, I know I'm jumping a little bit all around,
but fine.
On May 31st, there was a public hearing because the cat is out of the bag and people know everyone and their mama today is making CBD. A lot of them are making it poorly and not respecting the science and the art of this plant. But the public hearing, there were 10 hours of testimony, 100 speakers, and I was listening to it online to cover it since I couldn't be in I think it was in Maryland. And so I was listening to the takeaway, and the takeaway was that the hype had outweighed the science. And then next day on mainstream media, all of this BS, because that's not, cannabis is thousands of years old. And there are many doctors that have been treating children, adults for epilepsy, seizures with CBD long before Big Pharma. So we have to understand that Big Pharma isolates and synthesizes and makes things fake. They do not respect the entourage effect, but there's someone that advised and worked for Mark Russo, who worked for GW, that stated that they're very aware. So now they're even saying, like the FDA, I was reading one speech, I forget the dude's name, stating that there's side effects. No, mofo. It's Epidiolex that has side effects because it's synthetic. It doesn't. Entourage effect means that it's synergizing with all the other cannabinoids that are healing, and this is just a synthetic CBD. So it's shown to have a liver toxicity. It's because, one, we don't know what the inactive ingredients are. Why would you pay $45,000 a year for a fake CBD when God, universe, Mother Earth, whatever you want to call, has created this beautiful compound? And if it's made properly, liposomal and organic, with full spectrum rather than isolate, you would pay a fraction of that. And then you find out that, well, GW has an exclusive marketing agreement with Bayer, and now they've joined forces with the Epilepsy Foundation to get people on their tit of poison. So many of us in the CBD world have, I'm writing a story for the Epoch Times right now about the shenanigans, but that's when I first started feeling the wrath of what I dubbed Techno-Fascism. And when I realized that Google is a drug company, and I found out shocking things about, it made me realize, and I'll get into in a moment, of why now has it become so polarized to speak about vaccines. Now I understand. So when I found all of this and I came across Zach, I watched the Project Veritas when he was still undercover, and then I saw him on Alex Jones, and I felt a connection to him even through the screen, and reached out to him, and then did a 4-part series on my YouTube channel, which I invite you to check out, where, I mean, I didn't know that he wasn't aware that it was a drug company, but I wasn't aware of all he does know in regards to health and wellness. He's a highly intelligent human being, and was able to confirm a lot of the findings. And initially, when I wrote the piece, a different version, I was reading 1984 at the time, and the parallels were, I mean, mind-blowing. And I didn't think at that time that anyone would even publish my story. And I pitched it to at least 15 different outlets, and was so thrilled that the Epoch Times picked it up and it went viral, and it kind of resuscitated me on Twitter. I have been turned down, like I had written a piece as a functional medicine consultant talking about Jordan Peterson. I'm a Canadian. I have deep respect for for Jordan Peterson doesn't mean we have to agree with everything he says, but I've read his book, I've listened to him, and this was a very in-depth, well-written piece to understand why carnivory worked for him. I wasn't professing or stating to people that they should become carnivores. And not at all, because from a functional point of view, we are all different and have to really honor our own biome and our antecedents and so forth. But I had editors tell me that they would not take the story. One magazine, online publication, that has since expunged and deleted thousands of articles on health and wellness. I think she was a vegan, and so she thought I was maybe promoting carnivory, which is not the fact. And then I had another editor of a mainstream publication tell me that they won't touch the story because they're afraid of Twitter.
Wow.
These are, and then I had another editor tell me Peterson is a misogynist and a white supremacist. And my answer was, I'm a brown woman. What?
Right. It's such slander and libel to say that about him. I mean, again, no one has to agree with everything he says, but to call him a misogynist and a racist is a lie. I mean, it's a blatant lie.
Such a lie. This a good father and family man, has his wife traveling with him, and has decency. And these are editors. These are, what we're seeing in mainstream journalism now is disgusting. However, I believe that it's been happening for a long time, and I'm also having a political awakening, and I've been on a spiritual journey. My philosophy is know thyself since I was 13, and then later had a near-death experience, but just kind of really disenchanted by the left, whether you want to dub them extreme or not, because I considered myself a liberal. And so now I would say, if I had to label myself, I'm a liberal conservative, and I'm having to, as a journalist, stay neutral and reassess everything that has happened in the past 3 years, given the work of Project Veritas, and given the fact that there are many, many of us who have been censored, shadow banned, deleted, and digitally assassinated. So I came across today a quote from John Swinton that was back in 1880, and the quote is, "The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread." So maybe journalists have been used as pawns, and what we see today is a lot of parroting. So a lot of the mainstream will just parrot off of one another. And we have to be able to speak, to debate. And that is what one of the things that Peterson talks about, and thank God for long form podcasts, because what this is how we learn from one another. We don't have to agree, and we can have different views, but to not be able to speak and to be censored is just no bueno, unacceptable, and I think that positive will come out. I think that until I met Zach, that I admit I was jaded, because I've spoken to others that have had PTSD. You wake up and your bank account is shut down. You wake up and you're banned, and still these things happen. Like, I've been trying to connect. We're trying to connect our Instagram. Instagram is Facebook. Our feed, our shopping feed, and we were told that we have to basically get rid of all the supplements. So, and I'm looking online now, and I'm definitely not using Google as a search engine. I compare. I do use it, but I've seen even on DuckDuckGo research articles that I used to be able to find that are now gone. So this is like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. And we slowly became reliant, which is part of Techno-Fascism, on sourcing our information. Like, I'm not going to be able to go to the library downtown LA and find the stuff that I used to on functional medicine. I mean, they've deleted tons of videos off of YouTube. This is demonic.
Yeah, no argument there. No argument there. And even if you got down to the library, I don't know if people are aware, but many libraries, in order to make space for computers, have been throwing books out. There was a whole expose on that about 15, maybe 20 years ago. The San Francisco Library, they built a brand new, shiny new facility and threw out 1/3 of the books on the shelves to landfills. They didn't even give them away. They just threw them out. So that's just one city, and yeah, they're trying to close the doors on information. No question about it. And you've written a wonderful article, wonderfully important article, in the Epoch Times, and I'm going to have a link to it below for everybody on this page. And again,
Thank you.
it's really important. And again, we're talking with Miriam Hanane, and we're also going to put all the videos of her interview with Zach Voorhees. And this is one of the most important interviews I've seen in a long, long time, because Zach knows the ins and outs of how Google works, because he actually was an engineer at Google. And I've been aware of Google's functioning since almost the day they started. They used to have a legitimate search algorithm that would actually point you to things that were good. And as Miriam pointed out, for whatever reason, in 2016, they claim they don't want to see another president like Trump. So I mean, I think they're using Trump as the excuse for something that they always wanted to do anyway, which is they've thrown out the legitimate algorithms that they used to use, and now they are literally censoring the search results.
They're using auto suggestions, which, as a minor in psychology, is a subtle yet very powerful mind control tool. And so, yes, Zach also worked for YouTube, and I feel that him coming out, just like Carrie Porch coming out, but really has galvanized people. And on Twitter, because I love Twitter, and that's the thing, is that I personally, as a journalist, have been a part of the internet since the get-go, covering it for the Ventura Times, covering technology, working when I first came to this country for MSNBC, and covering the news for the internet. It was quite novel, and the advertising department was in charge of us, because then the news department, or the idea was like, oh, if people log in, they won't tune in. If people don't log on, they won't tune in. And so there was a fear. Mm-hmm. And so believing that these platforms were created to inspire the transference of information and connection and community, and we took it for granted, and now to find out there are no organic searches is quite sad. I would welcome or invite people to listen to Zach's talk, which I filmed on my phone, that really does an excellent job of breaking it down and unpacking the, literally, slides that say mind control the people. So hopefully you can share that as well. And yeah, I would ask people to follow me on Twitter. So I was saying I love these platforms, and so at the same time, if you have a partner, you don't just not say anything. There should be some constructive criticism, and you should be able to have a dialogue. With Twitter specifically, I'm still trying to wrap my head around on how their ways are, because unless someone retweets me, I'm posting excellent stuff, and it's just not getting out there, and so that's why I'm banding with others. And it's like I say, like a honeybee cannot live for more than 24 hours without her hive, and we really need to call on hive mentality today, to take on the man and to bring justice.
Great. Well, we've been talking with Miriam Hanane, and all those links are below, so definitely dig into this. This is some of the best material on online censorship that you're going to find anywhere, and it specifically is focused on the censorship of health information because all kinds of things are being censored, but
Yeah.
there's a particularly aggressive action, widespread, broad, deep, to basically erase anybody who's not part of the cheerleading squad for Big Pharma. I mean, you cannot say anything against any Big Pharma product, or conversely recommend a non-Big Pharma product, even when those products are safer, better, and cheaper and more effective. They're just shutting everyone down. So definitely take a look at all the links below. Follow Miriam on Twitter if you're a Twitter person. And Miriam, we're probably going to have you back to talk in greater detail about your film because we didn't even get a chance to talk about that. And we will have you back on in a second episode.
Okay, that would be lovely because the bees are still dying. And I tell people that we are the bees now, slowly being poisoned by sublethal doses, and that includes misinformation that people are ingesting. Yeah, because there's nothing organic about school anymore. It's processed and genetically modified.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, and everybody definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.